All right, so I have to be honest with you. I don't use a lot of mid-range phones throughout the year and definitely not as my daily driver, but I do like to check in from time to time to see what's going on. And so I have the POCO F5 Pro here. This phone just launched, and this phone has a starting price of $449. But the big thing that you're getting in this phone for this price is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chipset. Yes, that is a chipset that not that long ago was in all of the flagship phones that cost $1,000 and plus. But now it's made its way down to the mid-range market, and it changes everything because the performance of this phone is on point. So software-wise, you're running MIUI that runs on top of Android 13, and this has its little changes that give you some more customization. I love the way you can organize your home screen and stuff. I love the pull-down menu for kind of like your notification center, and then also to be able to get to the different quick access toggles and stuff. But the big thing is just that it's very fluid. I have no issues with how this software feels. But the best thing about having this chipset is just that navigating the software feels very fast and snappy. And I'm coming from using the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, and I did not feel like this phone was missing the beat as far as the feel of the phone. But maybe the most annoying thing, which really isn't a bug, is by design, is the fact that this phone does come with a decent amount of bloatware. So the bloatware doesn't hurt your phone, but it just feels odd to open up this phone and see a bunch of apps that you didn't download. Now, on one hand, though, I'm assuming that these companies are paying POCO to be able to have these apps preloaded on this phone, and that can help with the low price point. So you might be saving some money because they're making up money in this other way. And so that's really the only positive way I can look at this, because I don't know who really likes bloatware. But if I only have to take 2-3 minutes to delete some of these apps off and maybe I save some money, I don't think that's totally a bad thing, again, if I look at it from that perspective. And then as far as like software updates, you're looking at 2 years of Android updates and 3 years of security updates. But outside of those things, I do like the way this functions. I love this multitasking menu here. We have some options here at the top to help kind of clean up the performance of your phone, freeing up RAM and stuff like that. And then gaming performance is really good too. So my favorite game to kind of test on these phones is Call of Duty Mobile. So I play that game a lot with the controller, without a controller, and it functioned really well. Very fast, very snappy. You have this little kind of control center for the game. I forgot what it is, but you can swipe in from the top left-hand corner and you'll be able to kind of mute notifications and do different things to kind of maximize your gaming experience, which I like having that readily available. But one thing I really noticed is that the phone really didn't get that warm at all. I got a little warm, but I was really impressed with the cooling that was on the phone, especially at this price range. And then I can't forget about the screen, because that makes the games look good too, and also when you are watching movies and stuff. And so this phone does have a 6.67-inch WQHD plus Flow AMOLED dot display. A lot of words there, but it's coming in at 1440p. Looks good. I'm coming from the S23 Ultra. I'm going to mention that a couple times in this video. So when I first switched to it, it did feel a little washed out compared to that, but that phone costs way more, and that's what you expect. But after I got that out of my system, I really like the brightness of the display. In direct sunlight, it's not the best, but it's definitely doable. So 95% of the time, I was totally fine with the brightness of the screen. Colors look really good, but you do have a bunch of different options in the software to be able to change up the colors of the screen, so you can kind of change it to your particular taste, whether you like a little bit more vivid, a little bit more warm or cool. You can adjust that all in there. And then they also have a bunch of different AI enhancers where this will be improving photos and also video playback, and so you can mess around with those to really nail everything in for your particular taste. And this screen does run at 120 hertz, and it is adaptive. I don't know how low it goes. I don't think they gave me that information by the time I'm doing this video, but it will be able to adjust itself to be able to adjust to what you're doing on the screen and give you the appropriate refresh rate, or you can choose whatever refresh rate that you want. Now, one tip I will tell you is that by default, this screen is going to be at the lowest resolution to help preserve battery life. So you can go into the settings and then bump it up to the higher resolution to really get the best quality out of this screen. And I recommend you doing that, because the battery life on this phone is also something else that I was really impressed with. So they stuffed a 5,160 milliamp hour battery inside of this phone, and I've seen a lot of mid-range phones that have 5,000 milliamp hour batteries, and that doesn't always tell the whole story, because if the software and the hardware isn't really working together, that battery life really is not going to be that impressive. But you don't have to worry about that with this phone, because all-day battery life is what this phone is going to be giving you. And the big reason for that, at least in my eyes, is the fact that it does have that Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, which was really good for battery life in the flagship phones when it first launched, and that's the same thing here. And so I would tell you, I never had a day where I reached reached 0% on this phone when I was doing some testing and testing out the cameras and stuff like that. So I was very happy with it. And it would be safe to say that this is definitely a day-and-a-half phone that you can go without needing to charge it, at least in my experience. And in the box with this phone, you will find a 65-watt wall charger. Now, they're not bringing this phone to the US, so you will find an international charger if you do import this in for my Americans out there. But I do like the fact that it does support 65-watt wired charging, so you can always bring your own charger to the party. And this also does support 30-watt wireless charging. Oh, and underneath the display, you will find a fingerprint scanner, which works really well. The surface area is not super big compared to the flagship phones out there, but again, just like the brightness, 95% of the time, it worked just fine for me. I didn't have any issues. And oh, we haven't talked about the design yet. So this phone will be coming in black and also white like I have here. And it looks good. It's a glossy back. I'm not a big fan of that, but the fingerprints don't really show up that much on the white version of this phone, at least. But I really do like this camera module. So camera modules these days have gotten bigger and bigger, but I love how it's kind of angled on the sides here. So that makes it look really nice. And then also when you do place this phone down on a desk, when you're going up like the phone tapping and stuff, it starts to wiggle right here at the midway point. So it's not as bad as some of these other phones that have super big modules on the back of their phones. But overall, I'm happy with the design of the phone. Right-hand side, volume buttons, and also the power button. On the bottom, you'll find a USB-C port and also the dual SIM card tray. No micro SD card on this phone though. And then also you'll find one of the dual speakers that this phone does have. And then also at the top, you will find an IR blaster. You don't see that all the time, but this allows you to be able to control some of your other electronics in your house, like your TV or your set-top box. I did try to set this up with my Apple TV, and I couldn't really get it to fully control it. It did some things, so I wouldn't rely on it for that. But for my TVs, I did have a better experience. So there's a lot of good stuff that I just covered, but my biggest hesitation with mid-range phones is always going to be dealing with the cameras. So let's talk about the cameras. Now for the rear-facing cameras, you will find a 64 megapixel main wide-angle camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. Yeah, I'm not even going to cover the macro camera. We know that it's not going to be something that I personally would use, but looking at the quality that you can get from the rear-facing camera, especially this portrait mode shot, I was really happy with it. I like the colors. I like the way it looks. A little bit of issues still with the edge detection, but overall still a pleasing image. But I really like the fact that you have this 64 megapixel sensor inside of it, so when you do enable that mode, after you take the photo, you can now zoom in or crop in and still maintain some decent quality, as you can see here. So, you know, the extra megapixel count doesn't always make the photo look better, but having that little extra tool to be able to crop in after the fact, I do use that from time to time. But there's one thing I noticed when I was switching between the ultra wide, the wide angle camera modes, is that the ultra wide photos came out a little bit cooler, so more on the blue side versus the other two, which are on the warmer side. So there's definitely a big change there if you're looking for some type of consistency when you are out taking photos. So I didn't particularly like that. And now I'm using the front-facing camera to record this video. So this can record video up to 1080p at 30 frames per second, and it does support HDR. And I do have like a waterfall behind me, so you might be able to hear that because I am using the built-in microphones. Now, as far as photos, this can take up to 16 megapixel photos. And right now I'm showing you a comparison between the Pixel 6a on the left and also the Nothing Phone 1 on the right. So these are portrait mode photos, so let me know which one of these that you like the most in the comments. Now when it comes to videos, the videos weren't that bad, especially if you are taking the videos in the daytime. At nighttime, things start to fall apart with both the photos and the videos, but during the day, I was actually happy with the video. The biggest thing that I noticed was the stabilization was really good. I shot all these shots handheld and everything turned out really smooth. And as far as the recording formats, you can record up to 4K 60 frames per second, but if you do want to use the HDR video, that can only record up to 4K at 30 frames per second. And there is an 8K video mode that is still stuck at 24 frames per second, but the 4K is what I'll be using most, and I didn't have a lot of high expectations for it, but it didn't disappoint me at all. So look, all in all, I think we're at the point where these mid-range phones are really starting to benefit from the performance of last year's flagship phones, and that is the case with this. You have IP53 water resistance on this, and also you have face unlock, and then let's talk about the prices. So again, I mentioned this does start at $449 for the 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage version, and then you can go up to $499 for the version that has 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage, and then you go up to $549 for the version that has 12 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage. And if you are watching this video right when I uploaded it, hopefully you are, they do have like an early bird pricing where you can save, I think, up to like $50 on some of the versions. So make sure you check that out. I'll drop some some links down below. But overall, I'm very happy with this POCO F5 Pro. Very solid mid-range phone. What do you think about it though? Leave your comment down below. But like always, I do want to thank you for watching this video, and I will catch you later. Peace. Didn't drop it.